Happy Tuesday, everybody, and welcome to the MLS Power Rankings show for Week 11. As always, I'm your host, Andrew Wiebe, with Matt Doyle. A bunch of special guests coming up imminently to talk through the 10 teams that we've decided are the most interesting in MLS this week. Or we didn't talk about them last week, so we got to dive in. This week, we have a good guest list coming up for you. Alexi Lalas is going to join us to talk the last place team in these power rankings, Sporting Kansas City, as well as Inter Miami. There might have been a little bit of news or rumors or reports or just complete falsehood, I don't know which, about Inter Miami and Lionel Messi this morning. We'll talk DC. We'll talk Portland Timbers with Chris Reifer. That ought to be fun. He's one of the OGs on this power ranking show. Marcelo Balboa, another of those guys, a beautiful hair show with Alexi and Marcelo today. Colorado at number 12. Then Joe Lowery is going to join us to run through a couple teams in the top 10. So it should be a fun show. As always, go to MLSsoccer.com on Tuesdays at 11 a.m. Eastern for the full power rankings write-up. You can agree with it. You can disagree with it. You can gnash your teeth. All reactions welcome and encouraged. And if you're listening live on Twitter Spaces, awesome. We love to have you at 2 p.m. Eastern on Tuesdays. But if you can't listen live, or you catch the end of this, or you're listening now, but you have to jump off in 5 minutes, you want the rest, MLS Today, the podcast feed, is where this lives permanently, along with MLS After Dark on Saturday and Sunday, as well as the MLS Today show Monday through Friday with David Goss. Okay, let's get to it. And we start with number 28, Sporting Kansas City, 7-2. Down goes KC in Portland. It was an embarrassing second half. Johnny Russell basically said, I'm embarrassed to call ourselves professionals after that. It's been a rough season in Kansas City with injuries, with the results, with sort of the transfers that haven't led into a new generation over the last couple of years. Alexi Lalas is with us. Alexi, how does it feel to lose 7-2 or to give up 7 goals? Have you ever done that?
Probably. I'd have to go back in the annals. I'm sure. I played on a horrible, at that point, it was the Kansas City Wizards team many years ago in the previous century. But man, oh man, that was bad. That was people. It's not really a touchdown, right? It's a touchdown plus the extra point,
extra
or the point after,
right? Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Either way, it's bad. And when Johnny Russell or anybody comes out after that, even though he scored and everything, and it's still on him and everybody kind of to fix it. So there's this weird part of me when you scream and yell after a game where you got your ass kicked about the problems. Well, you're part of the problem ultimately, and it's not going well. I heard Doyle talk on Extra Time, and I completely agree with his assessment of this team right now, in that it's bad. I'm not sure it's going to get that much better. And yeah, you can talk about injuries and the Politos and stuff like that, and you can talk about people getting long in the teeth, and that's certainly, or people that you expect to play better, Emilias and that type of stuff. But I don't think it's going to change this year. I think the big question, and I think you guys talked about it a little bit, is when it comes to the leadership, when it comes to Peter Vermes, who is so much more than the actual scores and the success. I mean, he is the identity of that club, and that's what he set about doing, and by all accounts has done it. I think he's got a real long leash, and I would be flabbergasted if any type of change were made in this season. I think he's going to be given the benefit of the doubt through this season, regardless if they are the worst team that we have ever seen or if they get it together. But I think that they're going to end up being a team that just struggles through the rest of the year. And then the pressure will be on Peter, but I don't think they're making any changes.
There is. I will guarantee, I will put my 401k on the fact that Peter will be the head coach of this team, the soccer czar of this team, as I like to call him, because everything runs through him. It's his vision through the end of the year, and I think beyond, Alexi. But I think it's interesting. Yeah, I think probably beyond. It may not be as head coach, and maybe that's my next question. What's better right now? What job is he better at? The GM side or the coaching job? Because when I look at the future and I think about this club, the owners have put the ultimate trust in Peter. They know they're not soccer guys. They had Peter in the organization when they bought the team. They said, "You're our guy," and they put their trust in him, and that trust has paid off in spades, I would argue, given the resources that Kansas City's put in and where Kansas City was before, whether it be the facilities or the stadium, all these things that having a successful team helps you, build up. I wonder if maybe after the season, Peter might say, you know what, I'm just going to focus on maybe righting some of the issues we've had and focus on building the team, and let's say my lieutenant, Kerry Zavagnin, step in. How do you think that? What do you think the conversation is like at the end of this season? If it goes the same way, what do you see in the future for Kansas City?
Well, first off, you guys have all spent time with Peter Vermes. You'll find no one more competitive, and so
100%.
I don't think if he is going to go out in a coaching capacity, I think he wants to at least be given the opportunity and to try to rectify the situation. Having said that, and I think Peter would be the first person to tell you, when he came about and let's be honest, he amassed his power. The world in which we live in and the league in which he plays in was a very different thing. And you guys know, what does a coach want to do? They don't want to answer to anybody. They want to, and that's why they do amass power. And we've seen it up in Minnesota with Adrian Heath. We see it with Peter Vermes. But nowadays, in the modern game, it's very, very difficult in the modern structures of these organizations to do what some of these guys have been able to do. And, you leverage a really good moment to try to do that so that you're not responding. The interesting thing with Peter is I think he's good at both of them. But to your point, if there was a jumping off point, it might not be, hey, thank you for your time, you're out of here. It's just kind of shifting him to a different focus and specific. And in doing so, almost modernizing this KC experience that they have that Peter Vermes has been such a huge part of creating. But I also think that there's a fire that burns in Pete. I remember he started on not necessarily on the coaching side. I mean, he was in charge of youth clubs and all that kind of stuff. But there was something burning inside him, I think, in that moment, which enabled him and almost forced him to take that. And I think he loves that part of it. And giving that up, I'm not sure that he wants to do it, especially in this moment. I think he wants to go out on a much higher note from a coaching perspective, but I don't think he's going anywhere in terms of him being involved, and it might not be involved in SKC going forward. I've always said I would have no problem him being in like the Ernie Stewart job, and Ernie's doing a great job, but that type of situation for the national team, that would be interesting for him. So I think he's going to have a lot of different options when it comes to him. But Janet Jackson, what have you done for me lately? Nobody remembers what you did over the past 10 years, but I think he's going to get a little bit of a leash here. And this is not good, and this is not a good look for Peter Vermes in this moment.
He has earned that leash, in my opinion, Alexi. And the other thing is, there is an emotional side to fandom. I keep just trying to remind Sporting Kansas City fans what they've had for the last 10 years and to look around and see the bumps that other folks have gone through. I think Peter will get his choice. He'll have the opportunity to choose the path that he wants to take, whether that be front office, whether that be saying, I need a new challenge, whether that be saying my challenge is actually still holding these positions, being the manager, being the leader in the front office on the soccer side and getting this right. Because in so many ways, the Sporting Kansas City team, from a soccer perspective, and in a lot of ways, the culture perspective around the club with the fans too, is through his eyes, is through his experience, is through his accomplishments, is through his sheer
Stop. I've listened to you guys. I've listened to you guys for like 7 minutes on this.
Drop it then. Let's go.
Implicit in all of this, and what neither of you guys have said, is that Peter Vermes has gotten this wrong. Just do either of you guys?
Well, that's a given. That's a given.
So it's a given. All right. So it's like Peter Vermes has gotten this wrong. Is he getting it wrong more as a coach or a GM? One answer, like one word answer.
I think it's probably GM at this point because Peter Vermes, the manager, has.
That's not a one word answer. That's not a one word answer.
Okay, fine.
Lex.
Well, GM's not a one word answer, but GM.
Okay. All right.
But I would also add within that he's split in two ways.
He's also not responsible. I mean, he is responsible to and I know I talk about business a lot, to the customer ultimately. And if the ownership and the leadership there feels that he is a detriment right now to them moving forward, either in this moment or in the future, then they got to do what they need to do. And I know there's a romance, and I know that there's emotions and personal relationships and all that kind of stuff. But the ownership of Sporting KC, their responsibility and their sole responsibility is to their supporters and to ultimately their customers. And if Peter Vermes can't do it, then it doesn't matter what he did in the past. They have to do things in order to rectify the situation. If they have to do it right now, then do it right now.
I think Peter stays. And I think he's earned that. That's just my opinion.
Do you think he stays because they're doing what is right or they're doing what is romantic?
I think it's both for Sporting Kansas City. There's nobody else in the organization from a soccer perspective that can make a decision. In my opinion, he's at the very, very top. So who else is going to make that decision? Is it going to be the right decision? We've seen over and over in this league that like a lot of wrong decisions get made when it comes to who you hand your soccer side to. So I think it would be both.
That's right. I mean,
Yeah.
so he evidently has created a structure that makes him impenetrable.
Some of our bosses like us more than others. Some of our bosses owe us more than others. But ultimately, you're right. Sometimes it comes to the rubber hitting the road, and we'll see what happens. Let's talk Inter Miami real quick before we keep it rolling with some other guests here, Alexi. Oh, it's been an absolute whirlwind this morning. I mean, the rumors are flying, and nobody can resist a good Inter Miami Messi rumor. And I don't know, if folks certainly, if you listen to the show, you saw it. 35% of Inter Miami to Messi. He's going to sign in summer 2023. Taylor Twellman just came out and refuted that and said, no, this is negotiation tactics, etc. It wouldn't surprise me if Messi becomes a part owner, Alexi. But let's just talk about Miami and Messi in a nutshell. What's your reaction when you hear something like that?
It's a game changer. You're talking about arguably the best player to ever play the game coming to the United States, obviously coming to Major League Soccer. So it changes everything from an Inter Miami perspective, from an MLS perspective. Some of you who are listening right now were not around back in the mid-aughts or whatever, but I vividly remember getting the contract for David Beckham, which included this incredible clause that enabled him to buy an MLS team at the end of his time with the Galaxy at a completely reduced rate, and which is why he is right now the owner and the co-owner of Inter Miami. And so that there is this other ownership component, I actually think if this ends up being true, from a soccer perspective, yeah, it's interesting and it's credible and it's curiosity, and people will criticize or people will praise for the on-field, whatever that ends up being. But the ownership component of it, if you're going to woo arguably the greatest player ever to play the game, you're going to have to pay. And so that what is rumored to be 35% of Inter Miami that would make him a co-owner along with David Beckham. That's really, really interesting. And from an ownership perspective for MLS, that's a heavy hitter coming into a league that kind of, I guess, for him and his representation, they see gold in them, their MLS Hills. And that's a good thing to happen going forward. But who knows if this ends up happening. On the field, I'm a little bit more worried because this would be a situation, again, where he's playing in a league where we know the manufactured parity means that there's not that elite super club type of status in the way that he has played for the two teams that he has played in his life.
But I think at the same time, it's Messi, right? So he'll probably figure it out. Yeah, you got to do it. And like, even if you just put him in a situation where it's like, you're just going to be Carlos Valderrama circa 1996. You don't even have to run, just pass. Like, it would still probably be worth it from an on-field perspective because he is, one of the, in addition to being like the greatest dribbler of all time, the greatest goal scorer of all time, he's probably one of the 5 best passers of all time as well. Like, it's certainly.
But Doyle, who the hell's going to be your Steve Ralston or your Roy Lassiter or any of those other players that played around Valderrama down in Inter Miami?
No, you're absolutely right. And like, that's what's actually kind of making this Miami team a little bit interesting to watch because we're seeing Leo Campana break out maybe a bit. I think Ariel Lassiter has played pretty well, better than I thought he would play as a winger this year. I'm still not sold that Robbie Robinson is a winger, but like it seems to me like Chris Henderson and to a lesser extent Phil Neville are doing the right thing in saying like, okay, we're going to kick over some stones. We're going to get some guys from, that are discarded by other MLS teams or bring kids up from the academy. We're going to get them minutes and we're going to see if they can be part of the long-term answer. And like, chances are there's not going to be a Steve Ralston in the bunch, but chances are that a couple of them are going to be able to play. And for a team that was down at like the bottom of a hole, like that is what you need to do. That is what this year has to be for. It has to be like finding some solutions for the long term, because with the way the sanctions have hit this team, you can't just buy your way out of it in one off season.
Think of the American players out there that would be able to command a piece of an MLS team, because they're not doing it anymore where you get to buy an expansion team. I mean, I think you're probably only talking at this point about Christian who could do something like that, but it's a really interesting piece of the business puzzle, and the money the potential money that's involved going forward in terms of the value of these assets.
How do you think Messi, Alexi, would, and look, we could talk about the on-field, but it's almost just as interesting off the field for MLS as they grow. How do you think Messi would change the profile of MLS, the place that MLS has in the world, and its ability to do what I think we all expected to do, which is grow, but perhaps at a faster pace with that name value in the league?
This is where it gets interesting. I mean, he as a player, he's a completely different stratosphere than a David Beckham. But the way David Beckham cut through and appealed to so many different markets out there, and many that had absolutely nothing to do with soccer, that's where his value was. Messi is the reluctant hero. He's not a great personality. He doesn't really speak English. And yes, he is a name that people know, but I'm not even sure it's in the way that that David Beckham cut through. I'm not saying people wouldn't just be curious and want to come out and see it because it's Messi and he is that big of a name, but it's going to be a very different type of marketing play when it comes to Messi as opposed to David Beckham.
We'll see what happens. I don't know if I believe anything that happened this morning, but God knows I love talking about it. Inter Miami at 23. Alexi Lalas talking SKC in Miami with us today. Alexi, appreciate your time, man. Before we let you go, saw the video with Clint Dempsey. Some people loved it. Some people hated it. Give us a little hint as to what's to come on Fox for the World Cup.
I didn't see the video. What was it? What are you talking about?
What are you talking? Yeah, you're just the star of it, huh? Didn't see the final product though.
Oh no! Oh, so did they put out the video of me? Have they announced it? I've been out of pocket. What's going on?
Yeah, it's announced. It was all over yesterday. It's you and Clint glad handing, little back and forth. Clint holding a soccer ball very strategically. It looked like you both hit your marks, is what I'm saying.
Well, we try. No, it's cool. It's going to be cool to work with him. Obviously, he's come into our broadcasting world, and he's put a foot in there. We're going to throw him into the deep end and see what's going on. It's going to be fun. I think he's been interesting in the way that he has talked about the game. And look, he's a legend, and that he is coming back at a time when the U.S. men's national team is going to be involved in the World Cup. I think that's a wonderful thing. So we look forward to it. And he's part of our team now when it comes to what we're going to do with Fox, and it's going to be fun come November and December to be day after day after day sitting next to Clint Dempsey, picking his brain and seeing what he has to say about what's going on the field and off the field for that matter.
Look forward to it. Alexi, appreciate you, man. Thanks for dropping through.
Thanks, guys. See ya.
All right, let's talk DC United. Doyle, number 21. They are down a spot after comeback draw against Miami. And we're just going to, on YouTube at least, for those of you there, if you're on Twitter Spaces, sorry, you'll have to imagine them. All the Taxi Fountas goals and assists, the last 7 DC goals have come through Taxi. 5 goals, 2 assists in about 336 minutes, Doyle. They paid a couple $100,000 to get him out of his contract early in Austria. That seems like money well spent. This dude, He's got something.
Yeah, he clearly does. And in a lot of ways, he's providing what they had hoped to get from Edison Flores the past 3 years, and what Edison Flores has absolutely not delivered them, just in terms of like raw box score production. Right? No matter how well organized you are, no matter how distinct and inimitable your system is, if you don't have types of guys in the final third who can provide that final ball quality, whether it's scoring or assisting, you're not going to have a good time. DC was not having a good time earlier this year. It's been plug and play with Fountas, and they paid, like you mentioned it, they paid $400,000 to get him out of his contract early. It's $400,000 for about 10 games, and at the time, it seemed kind of crazy, but now, here we are 350 minutes later, and it seems like an absolute bargain. He's been fantastic.
There's an element of overperformance here.
Yep.
But he seems really active and aggressive, both in his passing and his off the ball movement in the final third. He's had some fortunate finishes here, and if you're on YouTube, you're watching one that comes off the goalkeeper's hands. But he puts himself in positions via his movement and sort of he wants to play little give and goes and run toward goal. And he's just trying to hit everything. It's just the aggression is a welcome change. What do you see in him as a player? How sustainable do you think this is? And how can they complement him?
No, I mean, he's not going to average, a goal and assist every 70 minutes or 60 minutes. Like he is going to slow down at some point. What I see from him is exactly what you described. Like, as you were starting to describe him, the word that was popping into my head was active. And That's the word you chose. And like, I think it speaks to who he is, right? He's always in motion around the box. He's always, looking to find space. And once he's there, he has the skill to do something with it. As for how they complement him, I mean, I like the idea of giving Ola Kamara more time up top because he's a guy who's just consistently produced over, almost it's got to be like 6 years now in MLS across 4 teams. So
if you got him, play him.
Right.
Is my opinion. Because if you want to trade him, you need him to be producing. You need him to be in the shop window. Estrada's on a loan. Estrada ain't it. Like he is not it.
David Goss is going to have to take the L on that one. He's a big Estrada guy. That is a terrible call from him.
Yeah, that ain't it. So I think you're right. I think you play Kamara, but this is a team that's got some DP spots open. That's looking to spin in the summer a little bit to complement Fountas. They're not going to be a team that goes out and signs like Shaqiri or Insigne or whatever it is.
Bullet dodged there, by the way.
Yeah, yeah. They're going to try to sign the Taxi Fountases of the world.
Yeah,
the guys that maybe $1 million, $2 million, $3 million in transfer fee in the prime of their career have shown production in a comparable league, in this case Austria, and who they think can come in and contribute immediately, but don't bust sort of the cap situation and aren't huge spins as far as DP dollars. I said recently I didn't know what the identity of this team was, and I still think there are question marks about that, but I think for sure what they're trying to be is a pressing team. And like a high press team in a sense, maybe not quite to the Red Bulls level, but like vertical, aggressive, trying to win the ball in good spots and go direct. So we'll see how they do with that. I think it's very telling as well that Hernan Losada's assistants stayed after Losada left. And so there's continuity. And Chad Ashton will get more out of these players, I think, than Losada was able to, just because the vibes will be a little bit better and everybody will be on the same page. There won't be sort of a tension, let's say, at the training facility. But that's DC United at 21. Congratulations to them on a comeback draw, but they got some more work to do in the Eastern Conference as well as in these power rankings to climb. Let's keep it rolling. Chris Reifer, unmute yourself, my man. We're talking Portland Timbers. We're talking 7 goals on 11 shots. That's just the 5th time in MLS history a team has scored 6 goals in a half. This had to be, I don't know. Tell me how you experienced this, man.
I experienced it a lot like I've experienced a lot of, Blazers games in the past, just kind of a free throw shooting contest. 7 for 11 is, solid. But I think there's some upward potential there to see, if they can get around that 80% or so number.
What was the biggest positive for you? Like in a game that was bizarre. I know Doyle was going to have trouble getting through that, so I had to power through. What was the biggest positive?
It really was seeing both Eric Williamson and Sebastian Blanco sort of look like the pre-injury or aging, in Blanco's instance, players that we've come to know and expect over the course of the last few years. That's really critical for the Timbers. They can make things work here and there, without those guys being in top form. But look, I mean, in terms of talent, and sort of expected performance, those are, 2 of the 3 or 4 most important players on the team. And if they're not performing at or near their peak levels, the Timbers are going to struggle. I think there are reasonable questions about whether Blanco's performance that he had this last weekend is going to be something that is as repeatable now as it was in the past. And I think that's very much reflected in the contract that the Timbers signed him to, which is not a contract that sort of locks him into a DP spot over the course of the next couple of years. That's going to be a little bit more inconsistent. But they still need to find a solution for that, for when he's not sort of at that supernova level. How are they going to find goals? And we saw over the course of the last few weeks that it's very, very difficult. Scoring 1 goal in all competitions over something horrific like 425 minutes. 6 goals in 45 minutes on the weekend, that's a little bit better, and that shows you a lot of the difference. With respect to Williamson, it's a different story. It's just a matter of getting back in fitness and in form after his ACL injury last year.
How close does Williamson look to being in fitness and in form? I know he was great in this game, but was this kind of out of the blue? Like, was he like completely shaking off rust, or were there signs coming to this? And because of that, there's a reasonable expectation that his recovery is linear from here on out.
I think there were signs, but I don't think there were very strong signs leading up into last weekend. And so I was a little bit surprised, frankly, that he looked so good. against SKC. And look, part of that, as you discussed, was SKC. They were not a difficult team to play against on the weekend. That's the only way you score 7 goals. It's the only way you score 6 goals in 45 minutes is if the other team is taking a bit of a selfie. But you know, I think there were signs that this may be coming. I'm a little bit surprised that it happened this early.
What's like the storyline you're following with the coaching right now? I know tactically substitutions, first choice, etc. I mean, other than Van Rankin's red card habits, what is it from a Gio perspective that he's talking about, thinking about, or that you're analyzing right now and paying attention to?
You know, it's actually a related point to what we just talked about. Now that Williamson is back healthy, I've really believed, and I believe since the beginning of the season, that their best set in terms of their personnel is going to be a 4-3-3. And one of the hallmarks of Gio that he's really sort of established over the last couple of years, certainly sort of starting in MLS's back in 2020 and has continued, is that he really likes to be very flexible with his front three. And when you like to play a front three, as he does, and you like to be so flexible, a 4-3-3 is a really sensible set to put behind it. And the Timbers personnel with Christian Paredes having a really good 2021, or sort of second half of 2021, Eric Williamson being the player that he is, and Diego Chara being the player that he is, and also like a resident of Shangri-La or something. You know, that's a set that really makes sense, but they weren't really able to do it, or at least do it in a full way, until Williamson was back. Now that he is, how is that going to look going forward? We saw it, I think, on the weekend where it looked very good against SKC, and it's a 4-3-3 that can kind of morph into a diamond depending on where Jimmy Chara goes in the free role that they give him. And it did a lot on the weekend. But how that works going forward, whether they can do it without a sort of a true target, which they don't have, playing Nathan Fergassa up front, and what will probably be relatively regular of Blanco and Chara in those the two other attacking roles. Whether that can continue to work going forward without a true target, I think is a big question. But it still is, to me, the set that has the biggest upside.
Last one for you, Chris. Fill in the blank here. If the Portland Timbers, currently 9th in the Western Conference, are to climb the line and, you know, I think play up to the level of talent and potential they have, this player needs to give more.
Anybody who is the striker. And I say that because I'm not sure that person is on the roster. It may be Felipe Mora, but he's still, it sounds like, several weeks away from returning to the field. Jaroslav Niškoda has been given plenty of opportunities and has not taken those opportunities. Nathan Fergassa, I think, is not somebody who the Timbers are putting a ton of expectations on, but certainly had a good debut, scoring a brace over the course of the last in the last game. And I will point out one of my favorite stats for the Timbers. It's an oldie, but it's a goodie. They are now up to 50. This is courtesy of my good friend Mike Donovan. They are now up to 50 braces in their MLS career, in their MLS tenure, without a single hat trick, which is just remarkable.
That is an incredible statistical outlier right there.
Yeah. But to answer your question, it's going to be one of those three guys, or it's going to be somebody new that they bring in over the summer. And I think, you know, it's a difficult decision given that they have Mora sort of lingering in the wings. I guess the theatrical wings, not the soccer wings. You know, that they have him kind of lingering here. But you know, I mean, if Fergassa isn't able to be a huge shock and turn into a line leading number 9, if Niškoda doesn't, you know, pull a miraculous turnaround, do they feel like they have what they need at number 9 in order to you know, make a run in the playoffs, in the playoffs like they have in years past? I think it's a huge question. And I think if the answer is no, then that's probably the season.
I want to see Fergassa get that first hat trick. We should have got it for him in that game. Come on, a 7-2, get it for him. Let him make history, Chris Reifer.
And I will point out that the Timbers have a remarkable habit of subbing off players who are on a hat trick, both Blanco and Fergassa, for reasons. I mean, it's not like this was totally arbitrary, but they both came off in like the 70th or 75th minute, depriving them of the opportunity to make some history.
Nobody gets a hattie, but everybody wants soccer made in Portland. Chris Reifer, always a pleasure, man. I've been doing this with you since the start of this Power Ranking show. Enjoy your day. All right, RSL at number 14. They're up 4 spots. How to win at home against Austin FC. Real Salt Lake, Doyle. The vibes are great. The sellouts are flowing. That's 5 straight for them. Even Andrew Brody is scoring goals, and not just goals, game winners after signing a new contract. The man is 27. He had to wait like a decade to get into the first team after joining the academy. What's your feeling? What's the vibe check with RSL right now?
Yeah, it's still a holding pattern. This was a good win, and the Andrew Brody story is so good, and part of that is like it's nice to see RSL leaning into the homegrown pipeline because and this is not the ideal way to do it. Like a guy at 27 finally breaking through, but like it's kind of gone dry the past couple of years, and Pablo still hasn't done a ton with the next generation of homegrown players aside from David Ochoa, who's not even, he's not even factoring this year, injuries and maybe, his head being elsewhere, I guess, a little bit. It's not clear why he is still not in the lineup. But like that is part of their identity. It's been part of their identity for damn near a decade now. And so that was nice to see. But it's also like what we said on Extra Time the other day. It's like, it's almost not worth analyzing too much about this club, how they play, because so much of it we expect to change in the next transfer window, right? Like this game was not a tactical masterpiece. It was just they went out there and they beat the hell out of Austin on set pieces. They got a fortunate red card, which I it was absolutely a red card, but it was not the smartest one in the world to take from Danny Ferreira. And then they just beat him down. And like that is a valid way to go out there and win a game. It's not going to get you through an entire season. So it almost, when I talk about
it might get you through an entire postseason, Doyle. I'm just saying.
I mean, they had actual tactics in the postseason last year. They have not had that yet. And like it's like Damir Kreilach has barely played this year. They have 3 open DPs, well, 2 now with Savarino coming back, and he hasn't taken the field yet. So they've gotten 0 minutes from DPs. They started off the year in a 3-5-2. They had to change they're in like a flat 4-4-2 now because of all the injuries. So like what can you say? Like in that situation, you tell the group, go out there, fight like hell, beat them on set pieces and counterattacks. And to their credit, that's exactly what they did.
And they're in 5th in the Western Conference. They're 4 points out of the Supporters Shield, and that's an incredible thing to say about this team. I'll take it just sort of off the field, and just say I'm really happy for everybody within the club and outside the club, as far as the supporters go, to feel like it's a place they want to be again, to feel like it's a place that represents them in the right way again, and that was lost. I don't think there's any doubt about that. So talking to a bunch of people within the club this week and outside the club as well, it's just refreshing to sort of see that 2011, 2012, 2013 RSL vibe come back. I mean, is the soccer there yet? No, but this new ownership group is obviously going to put some resources into it, has a large scouting network and network of clubs to tap into as well from around the world. That hasn't really worked with Cordova, but that's a different story entirely. They're gonna upgrade what they're doing as far as personnel, and right now the fans, the supporters, everybody involved in making the actual experience of going to a soccer game in Utah is absolutely excelling. So congratulations to them, and congratulations to Andrew Brody, that sweet right-footed strike into the top corner. Nice celebration from him. Just a special moment for a guy who probably thought it would never come for him. In fact, he said he didn't think it would. So congrats to Brody and RSL. They are moving up in these power rankings, 4 spots to 14. Marcelo, unmute yourself, man. Let's go to the other side of the Rockies.
Are we celebrating mediocrity right now? Is that what you just said?
No, I mean, look, we're not Colorado's 4-4-3. It's just they have a worse record than RSL. Marcelo, careful. Okay, fair. All right. So look, this was an interesting week for Colorado. Robin was not happy about the way the Open Cup stuff went down. I sort of thought, based on short rest and everything else involved, that maybe it would be a tough one for the Rapids at home against LAFC, Shield leading LAFC, and they win 2-0. What happened?
They rested. I thought Robin did a nice job of having fresh bodies out on the field. It was hot. I was on the field for Univision. It was not ideal for a visiting team to come in and play at 2:00 in the afternoon. It was hot, altitude. You could see LA played slow. Colorado never let them, because they're a high pressing team. Colorado really never let them get into a groove. And they did what they needed to do. They grinded it out. And let's be honest, McCarthy made some fantastic saves to keep LAFC in that game. And they did what they needed to do to get the home win and keep the streak going.
I agree with all of that 100%. And it was nice to see Jossie, get his first goal for Colorado. But it also feels like this team is sort of stuck in second or third gear, right? Like this was one of their best performances, but they weren't really turning it into goals. They, as you said, McCarthy had a lot to do with that, but it doesn't look like it's clicking quite yet. And is it just like with Cole Bassett out or gone and Jack Price out and Danny Wilson out for a good amount of time? It's just been too much turnover for them to really get into a flow.
They haven't really gotten into a flow. Let's be honest. They've been rotating some players. In the back of the mind, Austin Trusty's gone here in a few weeks. So they've been looking how we're going to replace that. How are you going to replace Bassett? They're trying to make decisions on Lucas Esteves if they're going to keep his loan. So I think there's a lot of things that are going on right now. And let's be honest, it's MLS. You don't need to play your best soccer right now. We know when you need to play your best soccer, but a sign of a good team is a team that can win when they're not playing their best soccer. And the important thing for this weekend was to get Jazzy his first goal and get that pressure off him at home.
So let me ask you this. What is it going to look like when this Colorado team plays its best soccer? Are they going to be because we've seen Robin go through like several iterations since he's been head coach. And like at times they've been more counterattacking. At times they've been high pressing. At times they've been like a really patient build-up team with the ball. Do you have any inkling of like what he wants this group to look like by the time October rolls around?
I think he wants it to be unpredictable. It's very difficult. Tell me, when you watch Colorado play, how teams match up against them. They're trying to figure out, is Colorado going to come out in a 4-3-3? Are they going to come out in a 5-2-3? Are they going to come out in a 5-3-2 with two forwards with a third guy pressing? So the important thing is, and you watch Colorado play, look at the 5 pockets that they attack. Outsides with Steves and Lucas, or with Lucas and Keegan. Inside pockets where Lewis comes in, he fills the gaps. And then you've got 5 guys attacking, hitting 5 spots. That's the key for them. Winning the ball, moving the ball quickly. So again, listen, we've seen them move around and keep other teams on their toes. And you saw LA couldn't figure it out. Minnesota figured it out, but at home with the altitude, listen, this is a possession-oriented team. They want to move the ball. They want to isolate players. They want to find the numerical advantage quickly on one side or the other side. But again, you're trying to fill shoes. 10 goals. Just think about it. Last year, 10 goals between Bassett and between. I'm drawing a blank. He went to Cincinnati.
Baji.
With Baji, you're trying to fill 10 goals in. So right now, it's just trying to get guys feeling comfortable in the system again.
2 questions for you, Cholo. One, is it Viacia that comes in this back line, the trade they made with Cincinnati, speaking of something going the other way, or somebody else once Austin Trusty leaves? And 2, who's been the best player performance-wise for you this season for these Rapids?
One, I think it has to be. You've got to give him a chance. That's why you went out and got him. You spent money, and you brought in a young player like that can play left, right, and he's getting used to the system. So, yeah, I do think that will be the guy that'll fill in. If he doesn't do the job, then eventually, yes, Colorado will have to go to the transfer market or within MLS and find somebody that can play that role. And the best player, there's 2 for me. And I'll be honest with you. Rubio, because he's got that hunger. He's got that goal look in his eye, and he wants to freaking score goals right now. And I think he's been fantastic defensively and offensively, getting himself in the box. And then the other one who is just putting teams on their heels is Jonathan Lewis. He has just been dangerous down that left-hand side, coming in and just pressing, but not afraid. He's gotten his confidence back to dribble at players one-on-one.
All right. Colorado Rapids going to Kansas
goals.
City tomorrow.
Got to turn that into goals, Jonathan. That's the thing.
Wednesday night. 8:30 p.m. Eastern for that one. There are 10 games on Wednesday night in MLS. ESPN Plus is your friend, and Marcelo Balboa is our friend. Chella, appreciate you, man. All right. Let's see. It is now time, I believe, for the top 10 and the Joe Lowery Power Hour. See, Joe has requested. I'll add him here as a speaker. Here's your top 10. Orlando at 10, Galaxy, Cincinnati, New York Red Bulls, Philadelphia rounding out those 5. And then the top 5, Sounders, LAFC, Montreal, Dallas, and New York City FC, according to the voters. 2 big jumps here in the top 5. New York City up 4 spots to 1. FC Dallas up 6 spots to 2. We will talk about, let's see, we're going to hit the Galaxy with Joe. We're going to hit the Union, Montreal, and Dallas. Joe, what's up, man?
Hey, Wiebe, how's it going?
Good. It sounds like you're coming out of like an echo chamber here. So we'll see. We'll see if it improves here. You just got done recording Total Soccer Show. So a lot of folks love listening to Joe over there. He writes for MLSsoccer.com as well. And you have a new venture, Joe, that I'd like you to plug because it is it's been already a bookmarked spot for me every single morning.
Yeah, so I'll take this chance. I'll take you up on that. So I'm a part of a new website covering American soccer called Backheel. You can find us at backheel.com. And our goal is to cover American soccer in fun and unique ways. So we're covering MLS, the U.S. national teams, the NWSL, USL, all that kind of stuff. We wrote about Seattle CCL win. I wrote about the tactics of that. We had Adam Bells writing a to-do list World Cup piece. We've had Justin Egan, who does some great work covering NYCFC, doing some bigger picture MLS stories. We have some other really fun, interesting names. Sam Jones has been involved doing some entertainment rankings for us. It's been a blast getting involved in the media space in a different way. And I hope people go and read our stuff and look ahead at some of the other things we'll be doing. We're super excited about it. It's been a blast so far. So that's the spiel. Thanks for letting me plug.
It's a good spiel. Backheel.com. For those of you, I have pulled up right now the Egan piece, why it's time for MLS to get rid of the designated player rule. This is going to seed ETR. I just want you to know that we will be using you like the Athletic, and we'll be jumping some conversations straight off this. Let's talk LA Galaxy on YouTube. Producer Phil, roll that tape. Yeah, they kind of got beat down a little bit by FC Dallas. Joe, what have you seen from the Galaxy so far this year?
So the Galaxy are still, and I know they lost 3-1 to Dallas, as you mentioned there. The Galaxy are still, I think, a solid defensive team. Coming into the last couple of weeks, they've been one of the straight-up best defensive teams in all of Major League Soccer. Pretty stingy, not allowing a ton of goals or expected goals. That obviously changed a little bit, and Dallas has the potential to be, I'm not sure Dallas is there yet, but they have the potential to be one of the better teams at unbalancing opposing defenses in MLS, and we certainly saw that in the first 23 minutes on Saturday. But overall, I think the Galaxy are strong against the ball. They have a pretty steady shape. They know how they want to play. They'll press a little bit, but they're solid in the mid-block as well. The issue, I think, for the Galaxy right now is a little bit more on the attacking side. They started off the year and created some chances, and had some really strong performances, but they've declined a little bit in that regard. They didn't create a ton against Dallas. They didn't create a ton against Austin the week before. I think that's the area that Greg Vanney is going to be wanting to look at right now. And to be honest, in terms of looking for solutions for some of their attacking problems, I don't know what can be done about that besides hoping that you get a little bit more from Douglas Costa, and he scores over the weekend, which is a good start. Getting a little bit more from Kevin Cabral, who has some good underlying numbers, but just can't put the ball in the back of the net right now. I think the Galaxy are just sort of hoping that some of those things start to correct over time.
I think it's reasonable to hope for that, but there has to be a plan B as well. There has to be this isn't going to work out. We need to do something drastic, and maybe that means buying out a DP or making a trade or something like that. If that happens, do you think it's addressing a need on the look? I'll put it this way: we did a segment on Sporting Kansas City on ETR yesterday, and we were talking about how if this was the NBA with the situation that Sporting KC is in and the situation that the Galaxy happen to be in, where the Galaxy are they're actually a really good team. They just need, quality attacking pieces. Sporting would go into tank mode and put Johnny Russell on the market, right? Getting a guy like that just seems like someone who is within the league, someone who is really, really good. Doesn't that seem like the right play for the Galaxy at this point?
Shouldn't have signed Douglas Costa before the season, huh?
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Oh my goodness.
I mean, I think adding something in the attack would be a good look, and I don't think you're looking at the 9 because I really enjoy watching Joveljic play. I think he's a good player. He's not maybe quite there yet, but between him and Chicharito, they have some really quality 9 options that a lot of other teams in MLS simply don't have. I think you're right, Doyle. You probably are looking at a winger. Samuel Grandsir, I think, could stand to have a few more minutes as well. I think he's been pretty good in limited time. But yeah, go out and look on the market. See if you can splash a little bit of cash within the league. That's a trend we're starting to see more and more about teams going and making deals with each other from within MLS, which I think is healthy. The Galaxy may be a team that's looking to do that as we go into the summer.
So you mentioned Joveljic in addition to Chicharito. This is going to be the follow-up question here. Isn't the natural sort of decision here just to go to a 3-5-2, especially because it puts Raheem Edwards at wing back, so it gets him into the attack a little bit more. We know that Araujo on the at right wing back, that would work as well. You get Chicharito, a running mate up top. You could even use Cabral as a backup number 9 in that situation as well, rather than having these guys on the wings who are just not doing the job that you're asking of wingers.
I'm not opposed to that. Doyle, how do you set up that midfield? Are you looking at a 2-1 or just sort of a number 6 with two eights ahead of them? How do you want that to look?
It would absolutely still be a 2-1, right? You don't break up the Delgado and Raveloson partnership, because that's been the best thing about the Galaxy this year. And then at that point, it becomes a coin flip between Sasha Kljestan, Victor Vasquez, or Efra Alvarez, who has somehow dodged the slander. But Efra Alvarez has been as disappointing as Costa and Grandsir and Cabral this year. Like, he has not done anything since that goal against Charlotte. So I honestly think, like, the next time out, Greg Vanney's got to consider that 3-5-2.
Sure, and maybe it's something similar to what we saw from the Rapids over the weekend, right, where you have a couple of strikers up top. It was Jonathan Lewis and Jossie Zardes, although sometimes it was a front three with Rubio on the wing. But
Yep.
Rubio also drifted underneath those two players. Maybe that's something for the Galaxy. I honestly think this team's going to be fine. It might take a shape shift or an acquisition from within the league or from wherever to really kick them back into gear. But I think still, despite that loss over the weekend and despite a little bit of a decline in form, I think this is a much better team than they were last season.
Wait, I just told Wiebe that I was done. We could move on to the next one, but I want to.
This is a Wiebe
one
move.
last
This is
thing
a Wiebe
that you
move.
said.
Just admit it.
Joe, you said you think this team will be fine. Their salary budget is the second highest in the league. They're paying to be so much better than fine, right? Like how do you get this team from being they're going to be fine to actually this team's going to win titles again? Because that's what they got for almost 20 years. That's what Galaxy fans were used to, and it's been almost a decade since they have won.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't had a chance to dig into the salary yet. As Wiebe mentioned, we were recording, but I'm excited to do that after this. I don't think this roster is quite good enough yet to be more than fine, right? I think they'll be certainly better than they were last year, but this is a process for Greg Vanney. It's a process for this organization to retool a little bit and to start spending more wisely, right? They've largely missed on a couple of DPs, and I'm not sure that the spine is as strong as a lot. Well, I know it's not as strong as some of the other real contenders in this league. I think the Galaxy's ceiling this year is lower than it should be based off of the spend they've had. But I'm not sure they can do a whole lot about that right now until they get some contracts off the books.
Think about if they had Paul Arriola in this team. Like, instead of the resources maybe put into Douglas Costa and Cabral, or a Velasco if you're talking to U22, or a Thiago Andrade, or a Tyus Magno. I mean, Kevin Cabral for 5 years, they got to find a way to pump some confidence into this dude, some production. Because it's not there right now. It's got to be killer for Greg Vanney. He's like, finally, out of Toronto, I can have wingers. He's like, wait, not wingers. Whoa. That's not what I meant. All right, let's keep it rolling. Portland Timbers. Not Portland Timbers. It starts with a P, but it's not the Timbers. Philadelphia Union, number 6. They were number 2 last week. They're down 4. They've drawn their last 3 games. I still think they've only lost 1 game on the season, 2 if you count Open Cup, Joe. But it feels like we're sort of in a deja vu holding pattern with them of like, okay, well, what can they get out of the chances they create if their quote-unquote star players, or at least most forward players, aren't going to be finishing as efficiently as we would like?
Sure. I mean, I think maybe, man, I guess it's just me coming on saying, yeah, they're fine. This team's fine too. Everybody's fine. I don't see a huge reason for the Union to drop based off of their own performances. I know they're not winning games at the same clip. They've had a bunch of draws recently, but man, they've also played some really good teams. The Red Bulls are a really good team. LAFC is a really good team. Nashville at home in the Jodas Park opener. That's not an easy situation to be in. And then before we have Montreal, who are just storming the castle right now in the Eastern Conference. I think the Union are exactly who we thought they were. They're a really well-drilled team. that will press at times. They're really disciplined coming and stepping forward out of that 4-4-2 diamond defensively. They're going to play direct. They're going to play in transition, and they're going to hope for production from Daniel Gazdag at the 10 spot and from those two number 9s. If those players aren't producing at the level that the Union need, they might not be a real MLS Cup contender. But when those players are hot, I think you're having a completely different conversation. But I don't think that's new information about this Union.
Yeah,
So,
it feels deja vu a bit.
What was new information, at least a little bit, was just how hard they leaned into energy drink soccer this year. And a lot of, go back 3 weeks ago, and a lot of the headlines were like, the Union have 40% possession on the year, but they're still atop the Supporter Shield rankings, so it doesn't matter. Yet when I watch this team, they're obviously good at playing that type of soccer. I watch this team and I think, man, there are times where they are so determined to go forward as fast as they possibly can that they don't let plays unfold and put themselves into better positions. Is there anything to that in your point of view, or is it just no, just be the team that plays long balls, wins second balls, gets 40% possession, do what you've been doing for the past 2 years?
It would be great to see this team add a different dimension and to become a little more comfortable on the ball, especially we see flashes from Jose Martinez and from a couple of the center backs, right? Jack Elliott and Glesnes. We see flashes of them being able to do really dangerous stuff in possession. I'm not sure, though, that can be a reliable attacking method for them when they have Daniel Gazdag as that 10. I haven't seen a ton of really high-quality playmaking from him. He has some decent close control, and he gets into good spots by moving off the ball. But I don't think you can really leverage Gazdag in the rest of that first choice starting 11 for Jim Curtin into a dangerous possession team unless you have a couple of different players out there who are purposefully in there to do different things. Unless you have someone like Ilsinho coming off the bench, and he's not like this, holy possession player or anything like that, but he embodied a different style and certainly a different last 20 minutes in the game for the Union. I'm not sure they have those same weapons right now. And I personally don't think that's a huge problem. Maybe I'll be singing a different tune in a couple of months after we see maybe some other flaws of this team exposed. But I think the energy drink soccer that they're playing suits the personnel better than maybe anything else they could do.
So what would have to happen for you to say, you know what, they actually have to bring it back to the drawing board and rethink some of this because it's not leading to the type of, the type of season that we all thought that they were going to have?
I think if you're still having the exact same problems with goal scoring, right? If you're not getting production from your front two, and there has been some of that, right? Julian Carranza has been, I think, generally a really good signing for the Union from Inter Miami. He's been good this season, and you're not quite getting enough out of maybe some of the other players in that spot between Ura and between Sergio Santos and whoever else is playing up front. But I think if we're in July or we're trending into August and you're still not seeing enough out of the attack, maybe it's time to rethink some stuff. And that could be a shape change. That could be a personnel tweak. Maybe you give Paxton Aronson a little bit of a run and you change things up and go to a Christmas tree and play a little bit more with the ball. But I'm not ready to I wouldn't be ready if I was Jim Curtin to make any of those moves right now.
I completely agree. Union, they're fine. Everybody's fine. Everybody's fine. You know who's more than fine? CF Montreal. Oh, it's wonderful to watch. Quebec in the summer, Montreal in the summer, there's literally nothing better. And Georgie was asked to start scoring goals by Greg Berhalter, Joe, and by God, he's scoring goals. He's got 6 already. Montreal, I think they have 6 wins and 2 draws, maybe since they lost the first 3 during CCL. What excites you most about this team?
Just how they play, Wiebe. They're so fun to watch on the ball. They play out of this 3-4-3 shape that sometimes is a little bit more of a 3-5-2, and either way, you have a ton of creative presences on the field for this Montreal team. Against Charlotte, you have Kamal Miller on the goal, right? Georgie's goal that he scores as a tap-in. It's a wonderful, it's not quite a team goal, but it's a wonderful example of how Montreal can play. You have Kamal Miller splitting lines and finding Joaquin Torres in the center circle, and then Torres flipping it into Romel Kyoto in behind. And unfortunately, he gets injured. I think he already had a little knock earlier on in that first half against Charlotte. But he comes off after this play. Either way, Kyoto gets into the box. He breaks forward and squares it to Mihailovic for a really simple goal at the edge of the 6-yard box. That's how dangerous this team can be. I hope Kyoto's able to get back and fit again. I think he's a really entertaining part of a really entertaining team for Montreal on that front line, even if he's not a traditional number 9. You have players like Lassi Lapalainen who are doing a really good job, Lapalainen in particular, coming in on his right foot from left wing back and adding a different dimension. Kamal Miller pushing up on that side as well. You have real depth in central midfield. That was one question for me about this Montreal team coming into this year. Can you get enough out of Victor Wanyama? I think the answer to that question has certainly been yes so far this year. And can you get enough out of the rest of that cast? And the answer to that's been yes, too, right? Ismael Conan was a starter for most of the season so far. He might be edged out of that role right now. I'm not entirely sure, but he gave you some good minutes in that spot and certainly has a ton of potential as a young Canadian international. You have other depth as well. Sam Piet's just now coming back from injury. That's been a huge answer to one of the main questions I had about this team. Then you add in Georgie's production, and Wilfred Nante's cooking up in Montreal right now.
Let's talk about Georgie because he's cooking as well. He is, top 3 in the MVP race, maybe top 1 even, and he's earned it. And all of this has led to the suspicion that he's going to be called into the U.S. national team's camp in next week and for the Nations League. If that happens, do you think he can provide an answer for the U.S. as a number 8?
I don't know the answer to that question, to be totally honest, but I think it's worth trying, right? I think it's interesting to think about this U.S. team and about what they would look like with a change of pace option in central midfield. You think about the first choice trio of Tyler Adams and Weston McKennie and Yunus Musa, and they bring a lot of different things. But when Weston McKennie is the most creative presence in your midfield, and he is creative in his own way, you're not looking at a really dynamic, possession, dangerous type of midfield. If you add someone like Georgie into that mix, maybe that improves certain elements. Now, you are sacrificing things, right? If you change up the midfield personnel and the profile of some of those players, you lose some of your danger in the press. And that is probably the best part about this U.S. team right now. So I don't know if it's worth it to sacrifice some of the defensive work rate for some bonus in possession. But it might be, right? And it might not be every game, but it might be in certain games or in certain instances or in certain moments late in games. Luca De La Torre can bring some of those possession quality attributes. Musa and McKennie can too. But Georgie is different, right? He's better on the ball in tight spaces. He's clever between the lines. He plays that role in a different way than any of those other players I mentioned. So I don't know if he's going to fix the U.S.'s attack, which has been fine but not particularly inspiring. But if I'm Greg Berhalter, I'm really curious to get a closer look at Georgie in camp. I'm really curious to get him a run in 1 or 2 games and to see what that looks like in possession.
What do you think the odds are he can make that team? Is it a huge long shot? Is it middle of the pack?
If we're talking about June, I think the odds are great. If we're talking about November, I still think it is a long shot with a lot hinging on the June window. If he comes out and performs like he's been performing in MLS, he's moving off the ball while he's breaking into the box, he's making some late arriving runs, he's getting between the lines and doing all of those things, I think he's got a good shot because I think the depth behind those 8s I already mentioned for the U.S. that are a bit more established just isn't there right now. I don't know if that's going to be Georgie. I don't know if that's going to be Pomykal. I don't know if it's going to be somebody that we haven't mentioned, someone who's not in MLS. I don't know what that looks like. But if, and that's a big if he performs well in June, I think the odds get a lot better for November.
All right, the Joe Lowery Power Hour has been absolutely wonderful. We'll finish it off with FC Dallas. Backheeled.com is your spot for all things Joe and many others. Total Soccer Show, MLS Soccer. Catch him on Twitter. He's a man of many platforms, let's say. FC Dallas, Jesus Ferreira. If that number 9 spot is up for grabs, as Clint Dempsey says, and I still agree with him, Jesus is he's putting his marker in, huh?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's impressive the season Jesus Ferreira has had in his first full season as a club player, getting looks at the 9 every single game. I think Nico Estevez has done Greg Berhalter a massive favor by playing the same shape and having Ferreira as that 9 game in and game out. He's leading the Golden Boot race, and he's doing some really impressive stuff as that false 9, but also then breaking into the box and making some of those runs and creating danger in and around the 18-yard box as well. It's been a great season for Jesus Ferreira. There's not really any doubt in my mind that based on where things are standing now, that he is the number 1 for the U.S. men's national team. I think he's earned that spot. We'll see how he looks in June, but I think this window is a really big opportunity for him to stake his claim and say, basically, yeah, this is my spot. I'm the number 1. I'm going to get a couple of starts either in the Nations League or in the friendlies or in some combination of those 2 things. And I'm the guy that Haji Wright and Brendan Vasquez and Ricardo Pepi and whoever else is in that conversation, Jordan Pefok, I'm the guy that you have to displace. So far, I think he's making a really strong case for himself in MLS this year.
You mentioned Nico Estev's system and how it's similar to a lot of what Greg Berhalter has done. Walk us through that. Tell us what you're seeing from this Dallas team system and how that relates to what the U.S. has tried to do over the past 3 years.
So to start with, it's the same base shape, right? So you're looking at that 4-3-3. It's been that for pretty much every game for Dallas this season. They made some tweaks late in games and gone to a 2 forward front, but we've seen Berhalter make some tweaks late in games and go to some different shapes. So you're looking at that same back four, a lone number 6 with 2 8s ahead of him, and then you're looking at a front 3. So the shape is the same. The pressing shape is similar as well, right? You're looking at a mid to high block 4-3-3. Sometimes the 9, which is Ferreira for Dallas, drops into midfield a little bit to take away number 6. The wingers are stepping high. They're pressing. They're trying to go and win the ball. And then when they win the ball in possession, and Paul Arriola has done that brilliantly this season. He certainly did against the Galaxy over the weekend. They're quick to attack, right? They're built to be dangerous in transition moments. And that's something that we've seen Berhalter consciously shift towards with the national team. All of those things are the same. And one last point I'll make that proves the similarity is we're seeing a lot of the same runs to flip back to possession. With O'Brien, especially against the Galaxy this past weekend, I noticed him making that run that we see Berhalter's wingers make all the time.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's a little check back to the ball and then a sprint in behind, or maybe it's just a bending run or even a direct run in behind, and you get this ball from the fullback or from maybe it's the number 8 on that side down the line to meet a winger moving from inside to outside. We see that movement all the time with Dallas. We see the 9 checking in. A lot of the attacking patterns and rotations are the same. And I think that does a ton of good for Paul Arriola on the wing, but really Jesus Ferreira getting some more reps in a very, very similar system to the one that Greg Berhalter plays.
Let me ask you, Joe, how do you watch games? Like, how many games are you watching? How do you watch games? How do you keep your thoughts organized? Just trying to just steal from you, man, to be honest with you.
So, well, first of all, I doubt I watch as many games as Doyle does, but I do watch, I think, an unhealthy amount of games. So I'll go through and I'll take notes and kind of turn it into an academic exercise for the most part. If I know I'm going to be watching, or if I know I'm going to be talking or writing about one game in particular, I'll pay really extra attention to that. And then at the beginning of the year, I'm watching pretty much every game for the first 5, 6, 7 weeks of the season. I'll watch as many as I can. Now, kind of past the 1/3 mark or right in that range, it's when I'll be a little more selective and then maybe pare it down and watch 2/3 to half of the games each weekend and then catch up on the stats or go through and watch specific clips from other games. But yeah, it's taking notes. It's trying to keep track of what's happening across the league. It's a lot of soccer, Wiebe, but it's good stuff.
How much of it is technical stuff? How much are you looking for vibes?
Oh, probably not as much as I should. I'm trying to get better with my vibes checks.
I'm a big vibe guy.
Yeah.
I don't think I do enough of that. But a lot of it is more the tactical side or looking at strengths and weaknesses for individual players and trying to get a read for how these new coaches are playing. And you have a bunch of those in the league every single year. That's always something that really intrigues me, looking into the tactical side of it.
Joe, we know that mean isn't your brand, but producer Phil wants to know the teams that you've dropped from your watch list now.
Oh, this is not going to go well for me. I don't watch as much SKC at this point. I don't watch as much Vancouver, although I just did a look at them for backheel.com earlier this week. And I'm trying to think, there's got to be 1 or 2 in the East. I'm not watching as much Chicago right now, although that will change. Jairo Torres made his...
That's self-care, Joe. That's self-care.
It is self-care. So Chicago and Miami have dropped a little bit, but make a signing or 2 in the summer window on July 7th, and I'm right back in.
He'll be right back there. Joe Lowery, the Power Hour here with Joe. We might have to make this a regular thing, Joe. This has been an absolute pleasure. Tell people where to follow you, how to get at your work, and we'll wrap this show up.
Sure. First of all, yeah, thanks for having me, Wiebe and Doyle. This is a ton of fun. You can follow me on Twitter at Joe C. Lowery, and you can listen to me on TSS or read my stuff along with Adam Snavely and Justin Egan and a whole bunch of other folks over at backheel.com.
All right, there you have it. This has been the Power Ranking Show for Week 11. Big thanks to all our guests. Alexi Lalas rolled through, Chris Reifer, Marcelo Balboa, of course, Joe Lowery, and to you, Matt, and our producer, Phil Ivanko, who's always in the comments, helping us keep on track and giving us the good nuggets. Thanks to all of you listening live on Twitter Spaces. You can do so every single Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern through my handle, or you can join through Doyle's as well. And if you want the full show, it goes up on the MLS Today Power Rankings feed. So that's a really easy way for you to get it on demand, along with MLS After Dark and the MLS Today show hosted by David Goss. If you aren't subscribed to Extra Time of the Call-Up, please go do so as well and enjoy your Tuesday. Why don't you? We will see you next week. Adios.